Hi guys, this is Daniel Alexander Cannon here on Logic Before Authority. I've been on YouTube now for 10 years, and this is the most important video that I'm ever going to put out. Probably even including the future. What I need to tell you is what's going on right now. I'm going to try not to say certain words so that the YouTube algorithm does not anywhere from block this video to delete it. Many of you have heard of what happened back in 1918. They have been referencing the event that you can see here in front of you back in 1918. I'm going to also tell you what else happened back in 1918 that caused this event. Okay. Now let me read this to you real quick. This is Thursday, November 7th, 1918. Corporation of the City of Kelowna or something like that. It says public notice. Notice is hereby given that in order to prevent the spread of the, and you can read it there for yourself. Okay. All schools, public and private churches, theaters, moving picture halls, pool rooms, and other places of amusement and lodge meetings are to be closed until further notice. All public gatherings consisting of 10 or more are prohibited. Okay? This is a newspaper clipping from 1918. So you can see the resemblance to what's going on right now, right? There was a ton was being put out back then that was saying that there was a V that was going around and it was making people sick and killing them. It was all over everywhere. Okay. And they gave out certain instructions. You can see this is the office of the superintendent of schools in Manhattan, New York City. On October the 17th, 1918. What you should know about the V. Okay. How to recognize it. The following signs or symptoms are usually present: fatigue, fever, headache, especially over the eyes, feeling of a cold in the head. In addition, there may be sneezing, chilliness, aching of the joints, back, or limbs. The eyes may water or become bloodshot, vomiting, or diarrhea. Okay. And the treatment was completely ridiculous that they were saying. But are you aware that those exact symptoms are the symptoms that people get from radiation exposure? Yeah, radiation exposure is the exact symptoms, except we're talking about non-ionized radiation here. It's not the kind of radiation that you get from a nuclear bomb. It's the kind of radiation that comes from something else. And I'm going to show it to you here. Everything that was in the news back then, the news was covering the V that was going around, and it was covering the war that broke out. Okay? The war and the V. The war and the V. That's all that was in the news. But there was something else that was going on. Yep, quietly behind the scenes. The invention of radio. Radio broadcasting means transmission of audio sound to radio receivers belonging to a public audience. Analog audio is the earliest form of radio broadcast. AM broadcasting began around 1920. That was nationwide, 1920, full effect. But when was all the testing? When was the rollout? Well, the rollout was over the previous years. It was being installed in the biggest cities first, like in New York and Chicago and other cities like that. The exact same places that we're having problems with right now, and where the current 1, 2, 3, 4 G is being rolled out right now. You see, guys, back then they knew that the rollout of radio broadcasting, because radio broadcasting was not just about your entertainment, it was about the ability to push out propaganda to an entire population. It was a weapon, okay? And they knew when they rolled it out that it was going to kill a bunch of people, but they did it anyways because they wanted the weapon. And yes, that weapon came with some very cool things. You could listen to music. You could listen to people talking banter about things. But we all should know that the television and the radio have been used to brainwash people across the country ever since when? Well, about 1918, 1920. Yeah, that's right. They rolled it out knowing that it was going to kill millions of people. And it did. And they kept going. This is when they rolled out all the big antennas so that they could broadcast and push energy, electricity out through the air. You know, the stuff that Nikola Tesla invented. And it just destroyed an entire generation of people. See, early days of radio, 1920, when you think they really started a couple of years before that, do you think that's a coincidence? I can promise you it's not. It's known, although they deny it. The ones that are making all the money off this, the ones that are gaining all this. Do you know that the 1, 2, 3, 4 G is going to give them the ability to see everything on the ground down to the size of like an inch that is moving? Like with radar, they can see ships in the distance and airplanes in the sky, and they can see storm clouds coming. They can see. Well, with 1, 2, 3, 4 G, they're going to be able to see too, but see everything, everywhere. They're installing this weapon throughout the country right now while we're on shutdown, lockdown. That's right. It's being done right in front of your face. It's being done right in front of my face. But this is exactly what is happening, guys. And this should absolutely infuriate you. I don't know what to say to y'all guys. Are we going to just sit back and allow this to happen? Well, you say, well, maybe it might not kill me. Okay, you might live through it. Because a lot of people did in their bodies. It's based on DNA, you see. That's why they've been this whole genealogy thing. People, these companies pushing, get your DNA checked for free and all this stuff. And get more information if you pay $19.95. They've been gathering our DNA because once they get your DNA, they know if this is going to kill you or not. See, they already know a lot of the people who it's going to kill. Anybody they've got their hands on their DNA from a hospital anywhere or any kind of a situation, for the last 10 years, whatever, 20 years. They have a database of that, and they know it's going to kill you, or that it probably won't kill you. They know the numbers, the population, they know the percentage. But you see, back in 1918, it killed, what was it, 50 million? That's what they say, 50 million. They admit to that. It killed 50 million people. What do you think this is going to do? It's going to dwarf it. Excuse me, it wasn't 50. It was 500 million. This is going to dwarf it. Yep. This is going to dwarf it. You might live through it, but your mom or your daddy's going to die. Your sister or your cousin is going to die. Your wife or your daughter is going to die. And if we don't do something about this, if we don't stand up to these assholes and let them know that we're still men, then you're just going to have to lay down and die. Just lay down and die. This rollout has been progressive to 2G, to 3G, to 4G. But why the big deal? Why are they shutting down the entire world at the quinkling time that, you know, the 5 is coming out? Why? They know what's going to happen. Why are they setting up all the hospitals, getting them ready, but there's nobody there? They know what's going to happen. When they flip the switch, people are around you, your family and your friends, they're going to drop dead. They're going to drop dead. You can stick your head in the sand and ignore this, but it ain't going to go away. They killed them back then and didn't care, and they're going to kill them now. And if you think any of those men standing on that stage on your television with that programming going on, if you think that they care one thing about you, they don't. They don't. It's a club, and you ain't in it. I ain't in it. They don't care at all. All they care about is power. Don't you get it? We don't have much time left, guys. We do not have much time left. They're going to now turn and push for everyone to get tested because they want your DNA. They want to get some tallies as to how many is going to die because they know it's about your DNA when you're exposed to these frequencies from these small cell towers that are going to be installed and through your neighborhood. They know it's going to kill so many people in that neighborhood, but they want to know who. So they're going to be pushing for us to get tested. And if we don't resist in the millions, if this video don't get to people in the millions, you could just start kissing you. Because you're going to die or they're going to die. It's going to happen. It's coming down. This guy that you see up there with the prayers all the time, he admits that this is all basically a bullcrap. He says that it's only going to kill a fatality rate of 0.1%. But that's not how many the G is going to take out, you see. But he admits that thing, you know, the common cold, it only is going to kill 0.1% or 0.01. In some reports, he's saying 0.1. If something other was only going to kill 0.1% of the people in this country, would you shut down the country? Of course not. The flu right now kills more than that. And we don't shut it down every year. When are you guys going to wake up? This ain't about the V. This is about 5G, and they know it's going to kill people, and they know it's serious, and they know there's going to be rioting. They know everything's going to go to hell. And if we don't get this information out, we're going to go to hell with it. Don't you see?
And let me tell you what else they're doing. When you go and you get that little thing put in your arm because they tell you it's gonna make you immune, it's gonna make you better. These companies that are involved in creating this stuff, well, they showed it to you a few years back. They showed you what they were going to be doing. The Matrix. Remember that? Remember the Sentinels? The Sentinels? The things that were swimming around in the water because in the Matrix they were under the water. It was weird, like, and then they would like come outside of it and they would be in real life. But then they would go back and when they go back out of the Matrix, they would be back and they were underwater. You know where they were? In your bloodstream. And these are nanobots. They showed it to us. They showed it to us. Look at that. That's not something that's alive. That's a nanobot. You see, I can see the Matrix. I can see what they're doing. God has given me a gift. And I'm screaming out to y'all guys to try to deliver this information. And if you don't help me, and if you don't distribute this information, you're part of the problem. God is my witness. This information is true. Can you see it? Can you see what the Matrix is? It's us. It's our bodies. And we're under attack. And then they're going to talk you into putting this in your body. Nanobots. I know, I realize how crazy it sounds, but these guys are absolute lunatics. Genius lunatics. And their intention, you see, if you know anything about the Georgia Guidestones, they only care to have about 500 million people left on this planet. With them in charge, of course. With their New World Order. Yeah, remember that? Remember that? We're there. And let me tell you something. We don't have much time left. This 1, 2, 3, 4 G thing, it's much worse than I'm describing it. Because if it don't kill you, then you got to live with it. And this technology, they put it right out there. Multi-tower targeting technology. They will be able to identify anybody that's causing a problem and eliminate them. You will just run out of oxygen, pass out, and die because the 60 gigahertz millimeter wave frequency resonates with your oxygen molecules, and they can multi-tower target you and kill you on a moment's notice. Tesla called it the death ray. Multi-tower targeting. Go back and read his stories. He told us about it. They can use multi-towers and they can kill anything, human or a machine, at a distance. Great distances. And these towers are going to be in your neighborhood. And we're going to let it happen. Yep. And we're the target. They will use this and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There will be nowhere to go because this is Skynet. You remember Terminator? They showed it to you. They like showing us stuff. They showed it to you. This is Skynet. They're going online with it. They've got it all figured out. They've got it all figured out. And it's coming. Matter of fact, it's here. We're just running completely out of time, guys. There will be no chance. There may not be no chance now. But you got to choose in this life how you want to live it and how you want to leave it. And the choice that you have is on your knees or standing up in the full armor of God, speaking the truth, telling the truth, and proclaim it in God's name. And you got to let the people know what's going on. You got to warn them. And we got to stop this one way or another. It has to be stopped. You see, the practice that they use to get us with this is, well, do you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the Indian went out to get him some rabbit for rabbit stew? And he come back to camp, there was a rabbit taking a bath in his pot. The rabbit got in the pot voluntarily. The rabbit got in, he's washing. He's having a nice bath because the water's warm. Or actually because the water was in the pot. He's washing. And the Indian decides he wants to start the fire. He's going to cook him a rabbit stew. And the rabbit gets out and helps him load the firewood under it. That's what we've done. That's exactly what we've done. We're we're helping them stoke the fire. We're paying for it. When you make your cell phone bill, your internet bill, all kinds of the stuff that you do, we have stoked the fire, and now we're in the pot. We're in the pot. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This water's kind of hot, but this is real nice. Oh yeah, give me one of them carrots. Hey, what is that? Something smells good. What is that? Mm-hmm. I love rabbit stew. You see, we the rabbit, or the frog, as the story sometimes goes, and we're in the pot, and we've helped them load the wood under it. And the fire's getting hot. It's starting to bubble, and the metal around the pot is getting so hot that we can't hardly stand to touch it anymore. So we either going to be rabbit stew, or we're going to get the hell out of this somehow. I'm calling on every man that is a man. I'm calling on every woman that is a woman. I'm calling y'all guys to stand up to this in the name of God, in the name of His Son, Jesus Christ. Give us the power to stand up against this evil. We have to do it because we don't have a choice. It's back in the plot. Back in the plot. What's your choice going to be? What's your choice going to be? This cartoon was put out in 1944. They knew they were cooking us in the pot. And they've laughed all the way to the bank. And they've already checked their DNA. They know which frequencies to not use so that because they hold their bloodline consistent, so that their DNA and their blood, they know that it's not going to kill them. They can turn it on all day long, as long as they don't use the frequency that resonates with their DNA, you see. I've had a long time now to think about this, and as God is my witness, I pray that you've heard my words. Please, Jesus, let them hear my words.
Next week, the 5G is going to be turned on in a lot of areas. The shutdown is for the complete installation of the 5G. President Trump keeps saying there's going to be a great influx next week of deaths. Video I just showed explains how they know what DNA will die from this. Apparently, we don't know if our DNA will hold up to this. The name of that video, I'm going to put it in the link. I would rather you rewatch this video here if you hadn't seen it, and spread the word. That's all I wanted to do was show that video. We knew it was coming. Go Donnie.com. We're talking worldwide, man. They're going to flip the switch. It's coming on. It may be in your house. But when the switch is flipped worldwide, watch and see. It's going to affect many people. It may be a slow kill. It may not affect you. But it's going to affect many people. And I believe that. I've been watching videos for years. Last 2 or 3 years, I'm telling you. They know this puts out a lot of radiation. 60 megahertz. It's so much radiation they can control a population. They can control a crowd. They can disperse the crowd with a frequency like that. I'll replay the video again. If y'all want to hear it. I believe it. I'll play it again. Do you want to hear it again? I know most of the crowd will leave. Okay, Miss Ann, let me find it. I took it off. This information needs to get out. I believe that. If I don't reach but 40 people in my live stream, y'all can share my video, or you can find it. The name of the channel
The Chinese
Right
people
there.
and harvesting their organs. Although most media have remained almost completely silent
On the
this issue over the
hashtag.
last decade, there's been mounting evidence that the Chinese Communist Party's transplant system is completely unethical and evil. Since 1999,
I wouldn't be playing this if I didn't think it was very important to get it out.
Hi, guys. This is Daniel Alexander Cannon here on Logic Before Authority. I've been on YouTube now for 10 years, and this is the most important video that I'm ever going to put out. Probably even include in the future. What I need to tell you is what's going on right now. I'm going to try not to say certain words so that the YouTube algorithm does not anywhere from block this video to delete it. Many of you have heard of what happened back in 1918. They have been referencing the event that you can see here in front of you back in 1918. I'm going to also tell you what else happened back in 1918 that caused this event. Okay? Now let me read this to you real quick. This is Thursday, November 7th, 1918. Corporation of the City of Kelowna or something like that. It says public notice. Notice is hereby given that in order to prevent the spread of the, and you can read it there for yourself. Okay. All schools, public and private churches, theaters, moving picture halls, pool rooms, and other places of amusement and lodge meetings are to be closed until further notice. All public gatherings consisting of 10 or more are prohibited. Okay? This is a newspaper clipping from 1918. So you can see the resemblance to what's going on right now, right? There was a ton of propaganda that was being put out back then that was saying that there was a V that was going around and it was making people sick and killing them. It was all over everywhere. Okay, and they gave out certain instructions. You can see this is the office of the superintendent of schools in Manhattan, New York City, on October the 17th, 1918. What you should know about the V. Okay, how to recognize it. The following signs or symptoms are usually present: fatigue, fever, headache, especially over the eyes, feeling of a cold in the head. In addition, there may be sneezing, chilliness, aching of the joints, back, or limbs. The eyes may water or become bloodshot, vomiting, or diarrhea. Okay. And the treatment was completely ridiculous that they were saying. But are you aware that those exact symptoms are the symptoms that people get from radiation exposure? Yeah, radiation exposure is the exact symptoms, except we're talking about non-ionized radiation here. It's not the kind of radiation that you get from a nuclear bomb. It's the kind of radiation that comes from something else. And I'm going to show it to you here. Everything that was in the news back then, the news was covering the V that was going around, and it was covering the war that broke out. Okay? The war and the V. The war and the V. That's all that was in the news. But there was something else that was going on. Quietly behind the scenes. The invention of radio. Radio broadcasting means transmission of audio sound to radio receivers belonging to a public audience. Analog audio is the earliest form of radio broadcast. AM broadcasting began around 1920. That was nationwide, 1920, full effect. But when was all the testing? When was the rollout? Well, the rollout was over the previous years. It was being installed in the biggest cities first, like in New York and in Chicago and other cities, like the exact same places that we're having problems with right now, and where the current 1, 2, 3, 4 G is being rolled out right now. You see, guys, back then they knew that the rollout of radio broadcasting, because radio broadcasting was not just about your entertainment, it was about the ability to push out propaganda to an entire population. It was a weapon, okay? And they knew when they rolled it out that it was going to kill a bunch of people, but they did it anyways because they wanted the weapon. And yes, that weapon came with some very cool things. You could listen to music. You could listen to people talk and banter about things. But we all should know that the television and the radio have been used to brainwash people across the country ever since when? Well, about 1918, 1920. Yeah, that's right. They rolled it out knowing that it was going to kill millions of people. And it did. And they kept going. This is when they rolled out all the big antennas so that they could broadcast and push energy, electricity out through the air. You know, the stuff that Nikola Tesla invented. And it just destroyed an entire generation of people. See, early days of radio, 1920. When you think they really started a couple of years before that, do you think that's a coincidence? I can promise you it's not. It's known, although they deny it. They deny it. The ones that are making all the money off of this, the ones that are gaining all the power off of this. Do you know that the 1, 2, 3, 4 G is going to give them the ability to see everything on the ground down to the size of like an inch that is moving? You know, like with radar, they can see ships in the distance and airplanes in the sky, and they can see storm clouds coming. They can see. Well, with 1, 2, 3, 4 G, they're going to be able to see too, but see everything, everywhere. They're installing this weapon throughout the country right now while we're on shutdown, lockdown. That's right. It's being done right in front of your face. It's being done right in front of my face. But this is exactly what is happening, guys. And this should absolutely infuriate you. I don't know what to say to y'all, guys. Are we going to just sit back and allow this to happen? Well, you say, well, maybe it might not kill me. Okay, you might live through it. Because a lot of people did in their bodies. It's based on DNA, you see. That's why they've been this whole genealogy thing. People
these companies pushing, get your DNA checked for free and all this stuff. And get more information if you pay $19.95. They've been gathering our DNA because once they get your DNA, they know if this is going to kill you or not. See, they already know a lot of the people who it's going to kill. Anybody they've got their hands on their DNA from a hospital anywhere or any kind of a situation for the last 10 years, whatever, 20 years, they have a database of that, and they know it's going to kill you, or that it probably won't kill you. They know the numbers, the population, they know the percentage. But you see, back in 1918, it killed, 50 million? That's what they say, 50 million. They admit to that. It killed 50 million people. What do you think this is going to do? It's going to dwarf it. Excuse me, it wasn't 50. It was 500 million. This is going to dwarf it. Yep. This is going to dwarf it. You might live through it, but your mom or your daddy's going to die. Your sister or your cousin is going to die. Your wife or your daughter is going to die. And if we don't do something about this, if we don't stand up to these assholes and let them know that we're still men, then you're just going to have to lay down and die. Just lay down and die. This rollout has been progressive. 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G. But why the big deal? Why are they shutting down the entire world at the quinkling time that, the 5 is coming out? Why? They know what's going to happen. Why are they setting up all the hospitals, getting them ready, but there's nobody there? They know what's going to happen. When they flip the switch, people are around you, your family and your friends, they're going to drop dead. They're going to drop dead. You can stick your head in the sand and ignore this, but it ain't going to go away. They killed them back then and didn't care, and they're going to kill them now. And if you think any of those men standing on that stage on your television with that programming going on, if you think that they care one thing about you, they don't. They don't. It's a club, and you ain't in it. I ain't in it. They don't care at all. All they care about is power. Don't you get it? We don't have much time left, guys. We do not have much time left. They're going to now turn and push for everyone to get tested because they want your DNA. They want to get some tallies as to how many is going to die because they know it's about your DNA. When you're exposed to these frequencies from these small cell towers that are going to be installed through your neighborhood, they know it's going to kill so many people in that neighborhood, but they want to know who. So they're going to be pushing for us to get tested. And if we don't resist in the millions, if this video don't get to people in the millions, you can just start kissing your family goodbye. Because you're going to die or they're going to die. It's going to happen. It's coming down. This guy that you see up there with the press all the time, he admits that this is all basically a bull crap. He says that it's only going to kill a fatality rate of 0.1%. But that's not how many the G is going to take out, you see. But he admits that thing, the common cold, it only is going to kill 0.1% or 0.01 in some reports. He's saying 0.1. if something other was only going to kill 0.1% of the people in this country, would you shut down the country? Of course not. The flu right now kills more than that, and we don't shut it down every year. When are you guys going to wake up? This ain't about the V. This is about 5G, and they know it's going to kill people, and they know it's serious, and they know there's going to be rioting. They know everything's going to go to hell. And if we don't get this information out, we're going to go to hell with it. Don't you see? And let me tell you what else they're doing. When you go and you get that little thing put in your arm because they tell you it's going to make you immune, it's going to make you better. These companies that are involved in creating this stuff, well, they showed it to you a few years back. They showed you what they were going to be doing. The Matrix. Remember that? Remember the Sentinels? The Sentinels? The things that were swimming around in the water because in the Matrix they were under the water. It was weird, like, and then they would like come outside of it and they would be in real life. But then they would go back and when they go back out of the Matrix, they would be back and they were underwater. You know where they were? In your bloodstream. And these are nanobots. They showed it to us. Look at that. That's not something that's alive. That's a nanobot. You see, I can see the Matrix. I can see what they're doing. God has given me a gift. And I'm screaming out to y'all guys to try to deliver this information. And if you don't help me, and if you don't distribute this information, you're part of the problem. God is my witness. This information is true. Can you see it? Can you see what the Matrix is? It's us. It's our bodies. And we're under attack. And then they're going to talk you into putting this in your body. Nanobots. I know, I realize how crazy it sounds, but these guys are absolute lunatics. Genius lunatics. And their intention, you see, if you know anything about the Georgia Guidestones, they only care to have about 500 million people left on this planet. With them in charge, of course. With their New World Order. Yeah, remember that? Remember that? We're there. And let me tell you something. We don't have much time left. This 1, 2, 3, 4 G thing, it's much worse than I'm describing it. Because if it don't kill you, then you got to live with it. And this technology, they put it right out there. Multi-tower targeting technology. They will be able to identify anybody that's causing a problem and eliminate them. You will just run out of oxygen, pass out, and die because the 60 gigahertz millimeter wave frequency resonates with your oxygen molecules, and they can multi-tower target you and kill you on a moment's notice. Tesla called it the death ray. Multi-tower targeting. Go back and read his stories. He told us about it. They can use multi-towers and they can kill anything, human or a machine, at a distance. Great distances. And these towers are going to be in your neighborhood. And we're going to let it happen. Yep. And we're the target. They will use this and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There will be nowhere to go because this is Skynet. You remember Terminator? They showed it to you. They like showing us stuff. They showed it to you. This is Skynet. They're going online with it. They've got it all figured out. They've got it all figured out. And it's coming. Matter of fact, it's here. We're just running completely out of time, guys. There will be no chance. There may not be no chance now. But you got to choose in this life how you want to live it and how you want to leave it. And the choice that you have is on your knees or standing up in the full armor of God, speaking the truth, telling the truth, and proclaim it in God's name. And you got to let the people know what's going on. You got to warn them. And we got to stop this one way or another. It has to be stopped. You see, the practice that they use to get us with this is, well, do you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the Indian went out to get him some rabbit for rabbit stew? And he come back to camp, there was a rabbit taking a bath in his pot. The rabbit got in the pot voluntarily. The rabbit got in, he's washing. He's having a nice bath because the water's warm. Or actually because the water was in the pot. He's washing. And the Indian decides he wants to start the fire. He's going to cook him a rabbit stew. And the rabbit gets out and helps him load the firewood under it. That's what we've done. That's exactly what we've done. We're stoking the fire. We're helping them stoke the fire. We're paying for it. When you make your cell phone bill, your internet bill, all kinds of stuff that you do, we have stoked the fire, and now we're in the pot. We're in the pot. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This water's kind of hot, but this is real nice. Oh yeah, give me one of them carrots. Hey, what is that? Something smells good. What is that? I love rabbit stew. You see, we the rabbit, or the frog, as the story sometimes goes, and we're in the pot, and we've helped them load the wood under it, and the fire's getting hot. It's starting to bubble, and the metal around the pot is getting so hot that we can't hardly stand to touch it anymore. So we either going to be rabbit stew, or we're going to get the hell out of this somehow. I'm calling on every man that is a man. I'm calling on every woman that is a woman. I'm calling y'all guys to stand up to this in the name of God. In the name of his son, Jesus Christ, give us the power to stand up against this evil. We have to do it because we don't have a choice. It's back in the pot. Back in the pot. What's your choice going to be? What's your choice going to be? This cartoon was put out in 1944. They knew they were cooking us in the pot. And they've laughed all the way to the bank. And they've already checked their DNA. They know which frequencies to not use so that they, because they hold their bloodline consistent, so that their DNA and their blood, they know that it's not going to kill them. They can turn it on all day long, as long as they don't use the frequency that resonates with their DNA, you see. got a long time now to think about this. And as God is my witness, I pray that you've heard my words. Please, Jesus, let them hear my words.
Five D, you're welcome to come on a few minutes and tell us your opinion. I think you got a good point. Richard Baker, we need to pray, my friend. We don't know the real effects. I didn't want to make this a real long live stream. I wanted to play that video. I do believe this V to be real. Also, why is the president coming out and saying repeatedly, next week will be worse? Why are they building all these hospitals? Is it why, like Logic Before Authority said, they know what's coming because of the 5G? I mean, I'm up for real discussion. If you have anything you would like to inject, there's the link. You're welcome to come in and put it on the panel and put it on record. I just felt like I needed to get this video out there. A lot of times this guy is right about stuff, and he's not right 100%, that's for sure, because I watch him and I listen to every word. I have been watching and listening to this guy for several years, just like I watch a lot of channels. I know there's channels out there that put out fear porn. I do not let a lot of the stuff worry me when it is fear porn. There is an Agenda 2021. Cache Brady's up. Hello, Cache Brady.
Hello, good night. I'm Super Dave. Oh, no problem with giving me a sexier name, but actually it's Cha-Cha. So thanks anyway for allowing me in. You know,
Well, thank you.
Super Dave.
I'm glad I know that, because Cache Brady all this time. It's Cha-Cha Brady, y'all. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, back during the time of the Spanish flu was my mom's birth year. So from a very young girl, my grandparents used to tell me things about that terrible flu. I know we have to be very careful what we say here on YouTube, but nonetheless, they talked about that terrible sickness. Now, let me relate to why whenever you put phenomena type content on, you probably are some of the first eyes to peep in. Almost 2 years ago, I live out here in the dark countryside here in North Carolina. You know, street lights non-existent. I'm in the woods. So about 2 years ago, I started to notice something that looked very odd to me. Then our local news station talked about there being a space station, you know, at a given time. But after that period, I'm thinking, why is the space station still there? And it's so clear, you can hardly miss it. Only on the very cloudy nights can you not see it. So I've sort of been saying that to a lot of people. Wonder what that is. And you know, I think the majority of the response has been, "Oh, it's probably some let's say some kind of a star." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of worried about what kind of star this is because it's so huge and it's always in the same place." And so as all of this right here sort of comes together, um, paranoid I may be, but I don't care. I have to say what's in my heart. With all of this going on, I'm listening to our leader, our president, talk about those many things that he mentioned, especially in the last couple of days when he knew nothing about nothing prior to, um, with his next week thing, next week, next week. I asked myself, is it let them eat pie? In other words, people are getting very happy about the few pennies that the government has promised to the majority of the society, is sitting around concentrating about that as opposed to what it may actually be. Even Bill Gates is showing some of his underground bunkers, and presidents told us about a couple of shots he took within the last 2, maybe 3 weeks. I'm thinking it's 2 weeks. And don't put anything past the type of mentality that I believe, and this has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with humanity. And I want to be wrong, but something is not right in Dodge. And so I want to be proven wrong. I don't want to sit here and worry about things that may not be. But as I go and constantly look out from the back view of my house and see it there with no explanation, even the utility workers from time to time, I'll ask them about it. And, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's probably some sort of a star or something, or the Big Dipper or something, something. No, it's not. I worked with when they had the nuclear programs going on with the Tennessee Valley Authority in Knoxville, Tennessee, for about 8 years. I visited the nuclear plants when they were really coming along with them before they started having all the problems, and they ended up shutting them down, to make a long story short. And I still marvel at what was going on there on those sites trying to put the nuclear plants together. So people, be mindful, be mindful, be mindful. Again, they don't want us to talk about religion and this and that and the other. But whoever your higher power is, it's time to go step up if you're not already refreshed with them. Thank you for allowing me to say what I need to say here, Super Dave. And I've been a fan of yours from the beginning, as you well know. I enjoy your chat and the chatters. Thank you.
Thank you, Cha Cha Brady. It's fine to talk about God. Um, I don't try to put religion, as a label for God. Um, I'm not sure where you stand with the 5G. Um, whether if you believe that if they cut it on, or when this thing becomes worldwide, the frequencies, the radiation.
Yes.
I'm not sure where you stand. Um, I'm not sure where I stand on a lot of these subjects we talk about.
Well,
until I see exactly,
yes,
uh,
but might be the
the effect,
place.
the effects. A lot of these places, China, people we know, hundreds of thousands of people have died, and we know that was the place for it to be turned on first. I'll go ahead and let you speak. If you could clarify.
Well, let's step back from where I first began. What was this truly that took out more military people than the World War I itself? It was a so-called flu. Was this a chemical warfare again that destroyed over 5 million people? You know, you have to look back at some of history to understand or try to get a perception of what is. Because people are capable of so many evil things in this world. I don't put anything past them. I sent you a link. I know I'm not a mod, so I couldn't put it in your direct chat, but I sent you a link that so much looks like back in 1920 with the other sickness, the other flu, that too much looks like a replication. So if you care to share that link, so be it. It's going to make your bones shatter. It's going to make your bones
If you
shatter.
can
Too
you
much
can
to
you
the-
put it in the I don't know what link you're talking about. I don't know where to find it. I'll play it right now.
Look at your wash your hands video. I think it was from yesterday or the day before. I
put it out today. Yes, ma'am.
I attached it there, but I don't mind to come back into
Okay.
the chat, put it there if it's if it's okay with you. But I'm telling you,
Yes,
it's
ma'am. That's
something.
fine. Let me find out if you're a moderator here on my channel.
Oh, I'm not. That's why I'm saying I did not put it in your chat.
Yes, ma'am. I'll find it and I'll play it.
Yeah. I didn't
You're
put
right.
it in your.
A lot of things seem to be replicating. I'm not
Absolutely.
I'm not that old. I wasn't living then, but I mean, I'll be glad to watch the video. Let me find it. I'm sorry. It takes time to hunt this.
No, okay, I
can
understand.
I can make you a moderator.
Okay, if you want to
I
do
mean,
that.
do you have cell towers or do you have cell towers around you? You said you live deep in the woods.
Yeah, I have one that sort of popped up maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's far over further. There is an access road that they made to it because nobody lives in that area, and nobody lives close to me either. I have a lot of acreage over here, but it looks like a big shining obstacle there, and it's accents the moon, might we say.
I have to find you and make you a moderator so you can put the. I don't see wash your hands video. I don't see you even where you commented.
No, I just came into it a moment ago. Sometimes I'm looking at something and then it triggers something else. So I may go into it, which I did go into that one. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And so I backed out. But I'll come out of this one right here and go ahead and let you mod me long enough for me to put that connection in there to share. Because I was, in the meantime, sharing this to a lot of people while this was going on. This particular chat was going on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. I know I cut up a lot. I just felt this video was very important to play.
Yeah.
Let me.
This one is history.
Moderator.
It's verified history, so I'll come out right this minute and go in there and get the link and bring it right back to your box there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, I'm exiting right here and going back into the
I'm gonna
chat.
go ahead and make you a moderator. I'm gonna make you a moderator because I appreciate you coming on.
Well, that's not a problem at all. It's not a problem. But thank you.
If you can put it in the. If you can put the link in the description, I'll try to find a way to copy it and play it.
Okay, I'm going to do it right now. All right, bye.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Cha Brady. Anyone else want to come on? You're welcome to come on. I wasn't going to make this long. It's an hour and 11 minutes. But I'm going to play Cha-Cha Brady's link if I can find a way to copy it. It's me, Super Dave. I'm going for the link. I could sit here and play a couple more videos that I've discovered the last couple days. I just feel like, you know, here on YouTube, we all have an opinion. I've heard where nurses, I'm serious about this, are in hospitals being sent home early, saying there's no customers. There's nobody sick coming in. And Donald Trump keeps saying, look, we have to wonder. 5D, thank you for being here. You're my mentor, my friend. You've commented on my Sky videos, and you're a Sky video man. And you have some awesome videos out there. And I've looked up to you, my friend. But we are intelligent beings. We have to wonder. We have to question everything, y'all. I'm not afraid, but I don't want to die. I mean, I have children, I have grandchildren. I have a job. Things are going good in my life. My YouTube channel's growing. I love and appreciate all of you. Did she put the link in here yet? I want to play it, whatever she's talking about. I guess she's hunting it down. If it's something very important we need to see, why not? Why not? Let's play the video. John Boy, I know you're having a rough time, my friend. Anybody else want to come in? Please do. Hit the link for me. Cha-Cha Brady, it was an honor to have you on. J&M Explorations, thank you, my friend. We are family here. If there's people in this chat you don't have, we love to show support, you know, for each other's channel. We grow together, you know. Anybody don't have J&M Explorations? Let's grow together, you know. We show love. Dad 72. Doesn't seem so, something doesn't seem right for sure. Odd feeling about this. That's what I mean. We have to ask questions. We have to. If we just sit back with shit and be sheeple, we might as well just lay in the bed and let them kill us. But, you know, there's something else I wonder about with technology. You know, I always did like technology and exploring, trying to learn. Just 5 years ago, I didn't know much about Wi-Fi, you know. But now I know a lot. We can't sit back and not keep up with the current events. Did you find it, Cha Brady? I'm still waiting. I don't mind waiting. We have 15 in the chat. We had 22 a while ago, I thought. Cha Brady will be coming on with a link here in the description. I'm going to try to find a way to share it. Here it is there. Y'all don't click that link in my live stream to everybody, if you don't mind. There's a process I have to go through. I don't have a clue what this is about. It says 1918 Spanish flu, historical documentary. All right, let's give it a minute because I have to send it to my email. There is a process, like I say. All right, it should be in my email. Y'all give me about 30 seconds and I'll have it up and running. It looks like these two are connected. Let me see what we got here now. I'm not even going to vet the video. I'm just going to play it.
Hey, I don't know if you heard, but we just had a big development in the unfolding Spygate investigations. It's just been revealed. It's
Are there latent systems in your brain that can be activated?
You have to give me a second. It's buffering. It'll go through here in just a minute, just like the other video.
To produce
It has to catch up.
That could alter the way you see the world forever?
An estimated 500 million people infected, between 50 and 100 million dead, a world torn apart by war and by a strange, deadly new disease. It swept across the world, leaving nowhere untouched. It was rumors that the Black Death had returned. This was the Spanish flu of 1918, the deadliest pandemic of the 20th century. Epidemics have infected societies throughout history. Usually epidemics come and go, but some truly stand out for their viciousness. In recent history, there has been no pandemic more devastating than the flu of 1918. Sometimes called the Spanish flu or swine flu, it killed about 675,000 in the United States alone. The outbreak came in the midst of World War I, and the flu would actually kill more troops than combat. The flu of 1918 was so deadly it killed more Americans than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Its Spanish flu was horrifying for even more reasons. It was very contagious, and it killed extremely quickly, sometimes in as few as 12 hours. It killed people in the prime of their lives, with the most victims being young, healthy people aged 20 to 40. Additionally, it killed some of its victims in bizarre, brutal ways, completely unlike a typical flu virus. Some symptoms actually closely resemble the plagues, which killed millions in the Middle Ages. But scientists have analyzed the pathogen's genome and verified it was not Black Death, which killed millions in 1918. It was just the flu. This video will cover how the flu began and how it spread across the world, the bizarre symptoms that made it so deadly, and how the flu pushed society to the very brink of collapse. If the epidemic continues its mathematical rate of acceleration, civilization could easily disappear within a few weeks. Victor Vaughan, Surgeon General of the Army, October 1918. No one can be absolutely sure where the pandemic originated, but in northern France, there was an outbreak of a flu-like disease at a British military base in 1917. The base was located in a swampy area with lots of waterfowl and pigs. New flu epidemics often arise when people have close contact with sick birds or pigs. There was a separate outbreak of respiratory disease among soldiers from Southeast Asia who fought in World War I from 1916 to 1918. Most flus start in Southeast Asia, and some historians argue the soldier may have brought a new virus to Europe. But historian John Barry makes the case in his fascinating book, The Great Influenza, that the flu may have originated on a farm in rural Kansas by jumping from infected pigs to humans. Indeed, the first officially recognized cases of the Spanish flu emerged at a military base in Kansas. The U.S. had just entered World War I, and training and industry had ramped up at a rapid pace as the war machine fired up. But in rural Haskell County, Kansas, a war of another type was quietly beginning. Haskell County was in the grip of a deadly outbreak of what seemed to be a mysterious new disease. People in the community, farmers mostly, may have caught the new disease when a pathogen from sick pigs jumped species and began infecting humans. The new virus, the swine flu, was shockingly contagious and extremely deadly. A local doctor was terrified by the death toll of the new virus and contacted the U.S. Public Health Service for advice. His concern was noted, but nothing else was done. After all, it was a tiny rural backwater. How could it spread far in such a sparsely populated area? Slowly the virus began to die down as it ran out of new people to infect. Perhaps it would have stopped there had the times been different, but 1918 was the perfect breeding ground for a worldwide pandemic. In early 1918, every military base was teeming with young men training for war. The military hurried to build new barracks, hospitals, training areas, and facilities to support the influx of hundreds of thousands of men. Some of these men were volunteers, and some had been drafted. The strange new disease was just dying down in Haskell County when a few young men left there, headed to Camp Funston, Kansas, for training. Camp Funston, located at modern-day Fort Riley, was already over capacity, with 56,000 young men training for war. There hadn't been time to build enough barracks. It was the coldest winter on record east of the Rockies, yet many men were sleeping in tents without any heat and only thin blankets. In an effort to keep them all warm, the commander ordered all the men to move into barracks, violating the health and safety rules that dictated how much space each soldier should have. Inside the barracks, men huddled around stoves trying to keep warm. The men from Haskell crowded in close too, even as they began to cough and sneeze. That's all it took. In the overcrowded barracks, the flu spread rapidly. It only took 6 days for the outbreak to begin. The men from Haskell County arrived on February 28th. Less than 1 week later, men began flooding into sick call. Within just a few weeks, the flu swept across the base, sickening thousands and killing between 38 and 50. It was a high death rate for the flu, but it was nothing compared to what was coming next. The virus was about to mutate and become much, much worse. Flu viruses are constantly mutating, and sometimes there will be a really big shift, or a virus that usually affects only animals mutates so it can infect people too. When that happens, it can be very deadly. The flu comes in waves. That's why we have a flu season. Although it may seem like a bad flu is done, the flu can hide for a while, or go infect people in a different part of the world and then return even worse. In the case of the 1918 flu, 3 waves of flu devastated the world. The first wave wasn't too bad, but the second and third waves were extremely dangerous. The outbreak at Camp Funston came just at the end of the flu season in the United States, so the first wave infected a lot of people, but then faded away. The military wasn't worried. They were grappling with a far more deadly outbreak of measles at the time. The flu virus seemed to fade away, but really it just went abroad to take on a world at war. It stalked into camp when the day was damp and chilly and cold, with a hand that was clammy and bony and bold, and its breath was icy and moldy and dank, and it killed so speedy and gloatingly greedy that it took away men from each company rank. The flu, Private Josh Lee, 1919.
We were just attacked. That's right, about 4 a.m., the printing press of our Hong Kong edition was visited by 4 masked men who were likely Chinese communists with batons, flammable liquid, and tinder. They poured the liquid on the ground, lit some newspapers, set the press on fire, and then ran off into the night. The entire thing was captured on video surveillance. And this was actually the 4th attack against our press over
Nearly all the ships carrying American troops to war arrived at the port in Brest, France. In April of 1918, just as the flu outbreak was dying down at Camp Funston, an epidemic began in Brest and slowly began spreading throughout northern France. Despite the illness spreading in the city, more and more troops poured in. Healthy men would land, become infected, and then ship out to new duty stations and to the front line, carrying the disease through every small town and hamlet through which the armies traveled. The flu tore across France and followed the front lines into Belgium and the Netherlands. It jumped across the lines of war and began infecting the German army, actually affecting the outcomes of battle since so many troops were too sick to fight. It jumped from the German army to the German people. By May, it had reached Italy, or crossed the Mediterranean and surged into North Africa. It also arrived in England by May, riding back on boats with troops heading home. Infection and death rates began to skyrocket in Spain and Portugal. The flu gained its name, the Spanish flu, from the early infection and high mortality rate in Spain, where reported 8 million died in May. Spain was neutral in World War I, and as a result, it was one of the only countries that was reporting the news without strict government censorship. Most countries didn't want to reveal to their enemies that they were battling an epidemic and didn't want to affect their people's morale, so the governments pressured the media to hide and downplay the severity of the virus. However, in neutral Spain, the press was free to report the news accurately. Newspaper headlines in Spain screamed of an epidemic that was killing millions, while other countries only whispered of the flu. The world believed the flu was worse in Spain, when in actuality, Spain was the only one talking about it at first. The flu continued spreading beyond Western Europe. By July, it had jumped to Scandinavia and Greece. The same month, the flu crept its way into a tense Russia, where the Tsar and his family had just been executed, and the Bolsheviks were battling with other factions to see who would control the future of Russia. A boat filled with 6 sailors arrived in Mumbai, India at the end of May. First, a few dock workers reported sick. Then workers at the next docks became ill. And then men at the nearby warehouses got sick, and so on, into the city. Ships left those same infested docks and spread to other ports in Asia. Sick people boarded
I'm still playing it.
tired of the media spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? Well, take a look at this. Over the last
I don't
3
know
years,
why
all the establishment media
did that. It's coming back.
The flu was able to spread so efficiently for many reasons, including the movement of vast companies of troops around the world, and the conditions those troops were living in. World War I was desperately brutal, and trench warfare made for horrific living conditions and for the perfect breeding ground for disease. Men lived out in the open, with no protection from the freezing winter, the pounding rain, or the sweltering sun.
I'm sharing the screen.
Troops at the front lines lived in filthy trenches for months at a time, where they had to eat, sleep, and answer all the calls of nature within close contact with each other. When it rained, the trenches filled up with water that became rank and foul as it had nowhere to drain. Men's feet rotted at their boots, a condition called trench foot. Dead bodies lay decomposing in no man's land between the two armies. When it rained, water would wash excrement, decomposing body parts, and filth down into the trenches where the men lived. Constant bombing churned up the dirt and turned the ground into a sloppy swamp. The mud became so bad that in some places it was like quicksand. Planks were laid down for the men to walk on. There were cases of horses, pack mules, and even soldiers slipping off the walkways and drowning in the mud.
Now it chose the buffer. I was trying to play it.
before they
Cha-cha,
could struggle
Brady.
out of their heavy gear.
It'll play.
By the end of the war, over 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians would die in the war. Thus, it's not surprising that when a virulent new virus arrived, it became an even more deadly foe than the enemy soldiers. At some point in the summer of 1918, the flu mutated to become more deadly. It gave some people the normal symptoms of fever, chills, nausea, aches, and diarrhea, and many got sick, then recovered like a normal flu. Some were sick longer or died after catching a secondary infection, such as pneumonia. However, many people became violently ill with strange symptoms. In fact, in the July 1918 edition of the medical journal The Lancet, doctors argued that this strange epidemic couldn't be the flu because the symptoms didn't fit. Italian doctors argued the same. In some people, Spanish flu caused fevers that were so high people hallucinated. Some writhed in agonized muscle pain so bad that doctors thought they had dengue, also called breakbone fever. It made some people temporarily or even permanently blind, deaf, or paralyzed. Some lost the ability to smell. Some had strong vertigo and would fall over if they tried to walk. Extreme ear infections developed very quickly, going from the first pain to the eardrums rupturing within only a few hours. Some had terrible headaches and double vision. Severe mucus excretions and inflammation made it hard for victims to breathe. Some people coughed so hard they tore their abdominal muscles. Doctors doing autopsies saw lungs so damaged that they resembled those of people who died from poisonous gas in the war. Some people developed a symptom most physicians had never seen before. Tiny puffs of air would leak out from tears in the lungs and get trapped beneath the skin, puffing up in little pockets all over their bodies. When they moved, the pockets would crackle like a bowl of Rice Krispies, according to one nurse. Some people developed hemorrhagic fever, which, like Ebola, causes its victims to bleed. An Army report described the flu as a rapidly escalating infection and lungs choked with blood, fatal in from 24 to 48 hours. Some people bled from their nose, their ears, and their eyes. Some people with the 1918 flu became so oxygen-starved they began to turn blue, or even looked black, a condition called cyanosis. People reportedly turned so dark that it was difficult to distinguish white people from people of color. For this reason, the flu picked up the nickname, and many wondered if the Black Death had returned. When people began turning blue, doctors knew they wouldn't survive more than a few hours. The flu was also terrifying because it could kill so quickly. Many victims died within a day or two, or even hours of symptoms. According to a story recounted in the book The Great Influenza, a man in Cape Town, South Africa, boarded a streetcar just as a conductor died. During the 3-mile ride to his house, 6 more people on the streetcar died. When the driver died, he got off the streetcar and walked home.
Is this yours? Will you stop bothering me? I'm sorting my trash here.
We've had a number of cases where people were perfectly healthy and died within 12 hours. Edward Winslow, epidemiologist and professor at Yale University. In late summer of 1918, the flu virus returned to America, But this time it was far more deadly. In August, a ship full of sick people arrived in New York City from Europe. 4 men had already died at sea, and 200 more people on the ship were sick. Many were taken to hospitals, but they weren't quarantined. In the following week, several more ships full of sick people arrived. The same was happening in other deep-water ports, like Boston, Philadelphia, and New Orleans. At the same time as the virus was arriving and spreading in ports, ships left those same ports headed for Canada, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, carrying infected people. In early September, there was an outbreak at Navy Pier in Boston. The pier was quarantined, but officers still moved between bases. An officer was probably responsible for carrying the flu to nearby Camp Devens. At first, just a few men reported sick, and then within only a few days, an epidemic broke out. By mid-September, thousands of men were sick, in many cases violently so. Of those who were sick, 75% were so ill they had to be hospitalized. The sheer number of patients overwhelmed the medical staff of the military hospital. The hospital had been designed to treat a maximum of 1,200 troops at one time, yet more than 6,000 patients were crammed in. Cots were stuffed into every available space, in hallways and offices, even on outdoor porches. The doctors and nurses fell ill. There were simply not enough healthy people to care for the thousands of sick people. So many died that they couldn't all fit in the hospital morgue. The dead were stacked up one on top of another, like firewood in the hallway outside the morgue. Every day they were carted away, and every day the hall filled up again. The Army medical officers issued an order that no men should be sent to or shipped out of Camp Devens. However, that's not what happened. A group of officers left Camp Devens, headed to Camp Grant in Illinois. Despite the rules against it, the chief officer there had authorized overcrowding due to a shortage in barracks, once again giving the ideal environment for the disease to spread. Shortly after arriving, the officers from Camp Devens became sick. The men were quarantined, but it was already too late. Within 2 days of the first cases, the flu was widespread throughout the camp. Within 4 days of the first case, men started dying. Within 5 days, doctors and nurses became sick and started dying. By 6 days, there were 4,000 men admitted to the hospital, and they converted 10 barracks into temporary hospitals. By 7 days, they were running out of medicine, disinfectant, and other medical supplies. By 9 days, they converted 9 more barracks to serve as hospitals, bringing the number up to 20. They didn't have enough beds, sheets, or ambulances to carry all the infirm. When they ran out of beds, soldiers were ordered to stuff straw into sacks to use as mattresses for the sick. They still didn't have enough. They tried to make enough face cloths to cover people's mouths to fight the spread of germs, but they ran out of cloth. The Red Cross set up a station to notify relatives that their loved ones were dying or dead. Now relatives poured into the midst of a deadly epidemic. Healthy relatives were escorted by coughing service members to identify dead bodies in the morgue. They crowded into the overfilled hospitals to visit ill loved ones. Desperate parents and wives tried to bribe nurses and orderlies to give special care to their soldier. It became such a problem that the head officer issued a warning about accepting bribes. Those relatives would leave the camp and carry the infection out into the civilian community, into local towns, onto cross-country trains, and ultimately back to their own hometowns. Civilian health officials called for an emergency quarantine of Camp Grant, but the virus was already out. 4 days after the first reported case, a trainload of troops had left Camp Grant to go cross-country to Camp Hancock near Augusta, Georgia. For the journey of almost 1,000 miles, the men were packed tightly into train cars with poor ventilation. In the tight quarters, men coughed, became feverish, and began bleeding from their eyes and ears. They infected each other swiftly, and the virus swept along the train. The train stopped repeatedly along the journey to refuel, and the men who could still walk got off the train to get a break from the hacking coughs of the sick and delirious men. There they interacted with railroad workers and curious locals who'd come to see the troops. They infected town after town for almost 1,000 miles. When they finally arrived in Georgia, 2,000 of the 3,000 men were so sick they needed to be hospitalized immediately. They started a new outbreak at Camp Hancock. Historians don't know how many of the men from the train died, but one report from Fort Leonard Wood claims 10%. Yet when hundreds began dying, the medical staff at the hospital stopped keeping careful records. They were just too overwhelmed by all the dead. One robust person showed the first symptoms at 4:00 p.m., and died by 10 o'clock a.m. The Journal of the American Medical Association.
What is the dark net? The internet can be separated into three different levels: the surface web, the deep.
The same thing would happen at bases across America. At Camp Custer in Michigan, 2,800 troops reported sick in a single day. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of troops were still shipping out to Europe. By this point, the government knew how dangerous the flu was, so they had tried to contain the virus on ships. Visibly sick men were not allowed on the ships, but this didn't make much difference in the end. The flu virus incubates for a few days before any signs of infection are visible. On board the ships, the men were locked into their bunk rooms for most of the voyage across the sea, and armed military police enforced the segregation. On most ships, about 400 men were locked into each crowded bunk room in cramped quarters with little ventilation. Although the troops were segregated from others in the ship, they still shared the same mess hall where they all ate. They would file through, breathing the same air and touching the same tables and chairs as the group before. On one ship, called the Leviathan, the flu broke out almost immediately, despite the quarantine efforts. Within 2 days, it had overwhelmed the ship's medical services. The doctors and nurses were laid up sick alongside their patients, delirious, coughing, and blood pouring from their bodies. The blood pooled on the floor, and the nurses, who were still well enough to work, walked through the puddles, leaving bloody footprints on the deck. Finally, there were so many sick men that they began laying them on the deck of the ship out in the elements. They even lay there in storms, because the well were too overwhelmed to move them, and the ill were too sick to move themselves. At first, the deaths came spaced apart, and the officers took careful notes in the captain's log of the Leviathan. At first, they wrote the date and time of death, the name and rank of the deceased, their unit and cause of death. But only 1 week after leaving New York, the officers were so overwhelmed they wrote only name and time of death. The captain's log shows 2 deaths at 2 a.m., 1 at 2:02 a.m., 2 at 2:15 a.m. It continued like that around the clock. The healthy must have been terrified, locked onto a ship filled with a deadly plague with nowhere to escape. They began burying men at sea. At first, they were solemn ceremonies, but after so many, the funerals became routine. They would read a name, say a brief prayer, and slide the body off the boat, then on to the next. The same was happening in every boat carrying troops across the ocean. Medical advisors begged the military to stop the troop movements, but the war machine needed men. At the same time, it was infecting the civilian population from port to port and along the railway lines. However, the very worst outbreak probably occurred in Philadelphia, and it was made immeasurably worse by mismanagement by leaders who ignored warnings from public health doctors. Had public health measures been implemented, perhaps much of the death and suffering could have been avoided. Philadelphia in 1918 was teeming with people. Hundreds of thousands had swarmed the city because of the new job opportunities working at steel plants, docks, railroad yards, and industries that supplied the war. Without enough housing for the influx, poor people were crowded into squalid, filthy slums that lacked indoor plumbing. Multiple families would cram into one apartment and share an outhouse in an alleyway with hundreds of people. Sometimes people shared not only apartments but beds, even sleeping in shifts. The boarding houses would rent out beds for 6 or 8 hours at a time. When one worker woke up to go to work, another worker would get into the newly vacated bed and sleep, same sheets and all. The streets were notoriously filthy, with rat infestations and gutters filled with trash, animal, and even human feces. With people living in overcrowded conditions, exhausted from hard labor and weak from poor nutrition, dirty water, and bad air quality, it was a perfect breeding ground for an epidemic. I had a little bird. Its name was Enza. I opened the window, and influenza. Children's jump roping song, 1918. A ship full of 6 sailors arrived into the Philadelphia Navy Yard in mid-September. Within a few days, the Navy hospital was overrun, and the Navy began sending sailors to civilian hospitals in the city. As sailors began dying, the flu spread to civilians. 2 days after the first sailor arrived at the hospital, multiple doctors and nurses felt fine as they started their shifts, yet collapsed and became desperately ill within hours. However, the health board for the city didn't want people to panic. They downplayed the severity of the disease. After the death of several said. The health board confidently declared the disease had reached its zenith and already begun to decline. It hadn't even gotten started. At the same time, the federal government was desperate for money from war bonds to fund the war. People would buy bonds, essentially loaning the government money for a promise of being paid back later with interest. Every city had a quota of bonds they had to sell, and Philadelphia was ready to hold the Liberty Loan Parade to sell war bonds. Public health doctors begged the city to cancel the parade, terrified that it would cause the outbreak to become an epidemic. The city government ignored them. On September 28th, hundreds of thousands of people jammed into the downtown streets to watch the parade. In that huddled crowd, all crushed together, it only took a few coughing, sneezing people to launch the epidemic. Within 76 hours, just 3 days later, the city's 31 hospitals had run out of bed space. They were completely full. Some hospitals tried to cram in more by laying patients on cots in the hallways, in offices, and on balconies. In some cases, the sick were laid on the floor next to a dying patient. Once the patient died, the body was taken away, and the new patient would be lifted into the same bed, still warm from the previous occupant. The city opened several temporary emergency hospitals, but it wasn't enough. Hospitals started refusing to accept any more patients. Lined up outside, begging to be let in. Some died standing in line. Even for those who got in, care was non-existent for most people. The hospitals ran out of medicine. The doctors and nurses were overtaxed, and they were dropping from the flu. They were desperate for help. People with no medical training volunteered. Physicians and nurses came out of retirement. Medical schools closed, and first-year medical students were put in charge of an entire floor of a hospital. One medical student reported that during the height of the outbreak, 1/4 of all the patients in the hospital died every day. Nurses were so overtaxed, they began adding toe tags to the living so they could tag several at once. Once a patient turned blue, it was only a matter of hours to death, so they felt confident in tagging them. Sometimes there wasn't any time for any intervention. Some people died within 24 hours of contracting the flu. A nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital started her shift in the morning and suddenly fell ill. She died 12 hours after first feeling sick. The number of dead kept growing. 5 days after the city held the Liberty Loan Parade, city leaders finally acted. The health department banned all public meetings. Churches, schools, and theaters were closed. They left the bars open, but those too were closed the next day. The courts closed and city services shut down. It took only a few days for the city's operations to completely grind to a halt. Within just 10 days, Philadelphia went from a few hundred cases of flu and a couple deaths per day to hundreds of thousands of people sick and hundreds dying every day, all because they ignored public health guidelines. By 3 weeks after the parade, the death toll stood at 4,500. So many died that they couldn't be buried fast enough. Gravediggers were sick or refused to bury flu victims. The bodies started piling up inside morgues and funeral homes. Some undertakers raised their prices 500% to try and cash in. Most ran out of coffins. One funeral home that hadn't run out hired guards because people were trying to steal the coffins. People began wrapping their dead in blankets or sewing together flour sacks to use as shrouds. No one came to take the bodies, and there was nowhere to bring them, so the dead stayed in the homes. People wrapped them in blankets and set them in closed-off rooms. The bodies were laid on porches or stacked in back alleys. In the poor, overcrowded tenement houses where multiple families lived in one apartment, there were no porches or spare rooms to put the bodies. They set them in the corners or stacked them in the alleyways next to the shared outhouses and drinking water pumps. Sometimes people were so sick that the person in bed next to them would die, and they couldn't gather the strength to take the body away. The city began to smell, the stench of death hanging heavily in the air. Finally, families began digging their own graves to bury their dead. Everyone was terrified. People avoided each other. There were cases of children whose parents got sick, and the children starved because no one would go near them in case the child was sick. This was particularly a problem since those who were most likely to die were people aged between 20 to 40, many of them parents.
10 more
People
minutes.
couldn't get food because no trucks were delivering goods in the city. The streets felt silent. Every business was closed. People hid inside their homes. The street cars stopped. The police cars stopped. The entire city ceased to function. You were constantly afraid. You were afraid because you saw so much death around you. You were surrounded by death. When each day dawned, you didn't know whether you would be there when the sun set that day. It wiped out entire families from the time that the day began in the morning to bedtime at night. There wasn't any single soul left. William Sardo, Washington, D.C. The Philadelphia city government was by now non-functional. Wealthy Philadelphia families appealed to the federal government for help. Ascend. Cities all across America were buckling beneath the weight of the epidemic, and the federal government was busy managing the outbreak on military bases and among troops in Europe. With the city government failing to act, the women of elite Philadelphia families, many of the same who had organized the Liberty Loan Parade, banded together to start outreach efforts. They gathered together civic leaders from across the city to start planning. They set up a special hotline to answer questions about the flu, but had a hard time keeping it staffed because so many employees were sick. They set up local neighborhood leaders who would organize distribution of food and medical care. They set up soup kitchens in the schools and food delivery to sick people when possible. 500 people volunteered their cars to be used as ambulances and to deliver food and drive doctors around to treat the sick. However, there was a desperate need for more volunteers, and most people were too afraid to get involved. Leaders begged for more help, but people turned away. Society began to break down.
Let me remove this ad.
We were just attacked. That's right. About 4 a.m., the printing press of our Hong Kong edition was visited by
Left into this video.
City leaders who hadn't bothered to attend meetings of the outreach effort finally got involved. They seized the city's emergency fund to pay for supplies and pay health workers. They opened additional morgues and sent out policemen to try and clear the piled up bodies. Like the ancient plagues, people carried their dead out to the streets. There, the bodies were loaded onto open trucks or horse-drawn wagons. There were no coffins, so they stacked them one on top of the other. Also, like in the days of the plague, they stopped trying to bury people individually and began digging mass graves where hundreds of bodies were dumped in. The city used construction equipment to dig long trenches and push the bodies in. Someone would stand by the trench, say a prayer, and then the steam shovels would push dirt over the piles of bodies. By late October, the epidemic was finally beginning to loosen its death grip on the city. In its aftermath, it left a death toll of 13,000. It also left thousands of orphaned children, a shortage of food and goods, and a stalled city that had to slowly grind its most basic services back into motion. Finally, it left a changed people, filled with fear, wearied by war and disease, and crushed by grief. The people of Phoenix are facing a crisis. Almost every home in the city has been stricken with the plague. Arizona Republican, November 8th, 1918. In other cities and towns across America, the news was the same. In New York City, 33,000 people died before the statisticians stopped counting. Some small towns tried to keep the virus out by quarantining themselves. They shut down all businesses and canceled public gatherings. People were ordered to stay in their homes and not touch or visit others. Some towns made it illegal to shake hands. In other towns, police were dispatched to nail signs on the doors of homes where people were sick. The signs said, "Influenza," in red letters. Rumors spread in Phoenix, Arizona, that dogs spread the disease. Policemen killed dogs in the streets, and people killed their own pets. Towns in Colorado set up barricades on the roads, and men guarded them with shotguns, preventing anyone from coming in. Other towns couldn't stop the trains from rolling through on their local platforms, but they refused to let anyone step off the trains. Anyone who did was thrown in prison and quarantined. It didn't work. The virus still slipped in. The only place that escaped the worst of the wrath was San Francisco, and historians credit that to aggressive response by the local government, who listened to their public health officials. Public Health Director William Hassler quarantined all naval stations before they had any reported cases. He knew it was only a matter of time. He ordered all public schools and gathering places closed. He divided the cities into separate districts with distinct support staff so as to segregate outbreaks. He laid out plans and organized the flu response before the flu ever hit the city so they would be ready when it did. The city's government, medical, and civic organizations banded together to educate citizens on prevention such as hand washing, avoiding public places, and wearing a face mask. While Philadelphia's government was still denying there was a problem, San Francisco authorities were distributing 100,000 face masks.
Sorry, guys. This should be the last ad. All right. That should be the last ad. There's 5 minutes left.
Police enforced the face mask rule at gunpoint and actually shot people who refused to wear masks in the streets. As the second wave diminished throughout the country, San Francisco rejoiced for having missed the flu. The flu would mutate once more and rage through the world for a third time, but infecting and killing fewer people. This time it would be less severe. This time it did hit San Francisco because they thought the flu was already over. The third wave hit the Southwest and Midwest hard, but for the rest of America, the worst of the flu had passed. Even as America woke from the nightmare, the epidemic had left its imprint. Right at the height of harvest time, farmers had been too sick to farm, and workers didn't show up to gather the food in. Food that was harvested rotted in warehouses because there was no one to transport it. There was a lag while the country tried to catch up on shipping food and goods, and store shelves and markets stayed empty for some time because as winter rolled in, there was a shortage of coal and other goods. However, the weary country still rejoiced, for an armistice was signed on November 11th, 1918. The war was finally over, even as the plague and its effects lingered on. In the U.S., it killed about 675,000. The flu killed an estimated 3% of the entire world population. In Latin America, the flu killed 10 out of every 1,000 people. In Africa, about 15 out of every 1,000 died, and in parts of Asia, the death rate was as high as 35 per thousand. In Tahiti, it killed 10% of the population, and in Western Samoa, 20% of the population died. In India alone, it killed about 20 million people. You may be asking yourself, could a deadly flu like that happen again? It's important to understand that the Spanish flu was devastating for a number of reasons unique to that time. However, the essential formula for epidemics still exists. Viruses sometimes jump species. For instance, this could happen at any time, anywhere in the world. And of course, flu viruses are constantly mutating. Usually mutations are minor, but occasionally a big mutation can happen. This has happened a few times in recent history. For instance, the Russian flu of 1889 killed about 1 million people. The Asian flu of 1957 killed about 2 million. And the Hong Kong flu of 1968 also killed about 2 million. Then in 2018, exactly 100 years after the outbreak of Spanish flu, a mutation brought a particularly deadly flu to the US and Australia. As of 2018, there is one strain of avian flu, an H5 type, that has managed to infect humans, but so far cannot jump between people. However, that particular strain of flu is frightening in its potential, according to Donald Burke, MD, former director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Immunization Research. Of the people who have been affected, it has been deadly in over 75% of cases. If that type of flu adapted to human infection, it could be catastrophic. So could it happen again? Yes, it could. As Burke said, when it comes to the probability of a pandemic flu, I think everyone would say it's not if, it's when. However, there's reason to be hopeful. When a new kind of flu emerged in 2009, a swine flu, just like the Spanish flu, officials did not waste any time acting. Public health officials acted swiftly, putting emergency epidemic plans into operation. We were lucky that the 2009 swine flu, though very contagious, was not a deadly strain, and it showed us a great deal. In fact, the way we respond to the next big epidemic could mean the difference between life or death. If you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe to Education World for more videos.
We are being censored. America's new
John Boy, are you still here? I noticed you tried to come up a while ago. Your signal was very weak. You went back on. Thank y'all for hanging in there, Jim G. Cha Brady. Miss Ann Walsworth. That's 3 of you. How many? There's 5 more here. Flat Earth Preacher. J&M Explorations. Where you at, John Boy? You state your piece if you're still watching. I believe in pandemics. I believe in the flu. I believe in the cold. My whole life, I've caught a cold off and on. I've had the flu probably once in my life. Richard Baker, thank you for staying here. I know there's only 8 in the chat. Thank you, Cha Brady. That was a great history lesson. Just want to come up? You're welcome to come up, or I'm in the live stream. I just felt like with this 5G that's going to be cut on, they know what's going to happen starting next week, y'all. They're building these hospitals. Look. I believe there's a sickness out there, and I'm not pushing fear porn. We're like 25 days behind where China was. The peak of it is coming still. But these guys on our television screen, they push code words and signs. I mean, some people can see it. Cha Brady says President of Philippines ordered to kill anyone defying curfew. You know, yesterday to American Life in the Philippines, I said I didn't want to tell it like that. But he came on and I knew because I had seen it somewhere else that they kill people that's on the street. I was giving time for anyone that wants to come up. Cha Brady, thank you. Last attempt. I'm not the star of anything. I just want us to understand the peak of this is coming next week and the next week. I don't watch TV a lot, but I do hear words here and there when I catch 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you, Miss Ann Walsworth. Jim G. P. Packer, hello. I'm new here. Anyone hear about the green comet atlas that's coming towards Earth? April the 29th, there's an asteroid coming by. Is that the same thing? And there could be particles from this asteroid that may hit Earth, you know? Go Donnie.com. We may survive 5G. But radiation is not good for us. Look at the fallout from Russia. We don't know how many people it killed there. Look at the fallout from Japan. They're dumping stuff in the ocean. Radiation is not good. It may kill us quickly. It may kill us slowly. I'm not this grand educated guy. I wanted to share opinions. There's only one man that knows what's going to happen, and it's our good Lord. Well, you know, as soldiers, we need to pray. We need to pray every day. We need to stand up for what we believe in. If they cut this thing on and we see the effects that it takes out a lot of, we are Americans. We can stop anything. That's radiation from the microwave, go Donnie Con. That is not as much as we're talking about for the 5G. And a lot of that radiation stays contained within the microwave. And I have a EMF detector. I need to find it. I ordered it off of eBay. I went around to my smart meter. I went around to the cell phone. And that's when it started lighting up, you know? I really appreciate y'all. Now y'all can see me without my hat on. Because I'm going in. If no one else jumps on real quick, I'm going in and I'm going to bed. I didn't expect this live stream to be this long. Cha Cha Brady, I am honored to play it. I don't know. From the flu back in that 1918, I don't know. I assume germs. You know, people, this social distancing, you know, it may be pretty smart to do what they're doing. But we're fixing to crash our economy here in America. There's going to be a lot of businesses that won't make it back if this thing continues to go on. We need to hold hands, man. Stand together strong. In the name of our Lord God in heaven, the creator of all. You created me. You created these people in this chat. You created our world, the animals and the birds, every materialistic thing, the minerals. God, everything that creepeth. Please watch over us. Help us be strong. Help us live through this. A lot of us are still confused. And we have the right to be. Clear things up in our heads, God. Let us see the real picture. Let us pinpoint what is happening. Show us what we really need to do. We come to conclusions that it may be this, that it may be that. You know what it is. It may be real. We just don't realize it. Continue to protect us, Lord God. All it takes is two people that believe together. And faith can move a mountain. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Dana Shiver. Y'all. There's not many people that's going to pray right here on their screen. I've watched channel after channel after channel. They say pray. I'll take my hat off and I'll pray. But we need to be strong. That's what's gotten me where I am today. 10 years ago, I was on my knees, starting all over again. Ain't nobody can tell me prayer won't change things, because it will. I have more today than I ever had. And I thought, bang, that I could never regain what I have. God hears our prayers. You are never too far gone. He will hear every word we have to say if we diligently mean it.